What if the hardest person to face isn't your boss, your rival, or even a stranger, but yourself? Ethan was a man admired by everyone around him. He had a successful career, a family that loved him, and friends who envied the life he seemed to lead. Yet beneath the surface, a restlessness gnawed at him, a quiet unease that no promotion, compliment, or achievement could silence. He often blamed the world for his dissatisfaction, thinking that if only circumstances were different, he would finally feel fulfilled. But deep down, he sensed that the unease had nothing to do with his job or possessions. One afternoon, wandering through a part of the city he rarely visited, he noticed an old, narrow shop tucked between two modern stores with a sign that read, "The Mirror of Truth," in delicate, curling letters. Curiosity drew him in, and the air inside felt different, almost sacred, as though time slowed the moment he stepped across the threshold. An elderly shopkeeper with kind but piercing eyes greeted him, and without preamble said, "This mirror does not show your reflection, it shows your truth." Ethan laughed nervously, thinking it a gimmick, and said, "I don't need a mirror to see the truth. I have everything I could possibly want." The shopkeeper's eyes twinkled, and he gestured silently for Ethan to look. Hesitant but intrigued, he stepped closer, and when his eyes met the glass, he was confronted with an image that made his heart skip a beat. It wasn't the familiar, polished version of himself he presented to the world. It was a man weighed down by resentment, fear, and unacknowledged anger. A man whose pride had quietly eroded his empathy, whose impatience had cost him connections he barely realized were slipping away, whose fear of failure had caused him to hide from truths he didn't want to confront. Every excuse he had made, every time he had blamed others instead of looking inward, every compromise he had accepted to appear strong or successful, every judgment he had passed on others without self-reflection, stared back at him with an almost accusatory clarity. Shocked, he stumbled back, nearly knocking over a small vase, and whispered, "This isn't me. This can't be me." The shopkeeper, calm and steady, replied, "It is, but it does not have to remain so. Truth is a mirror. You cannot hide from it, but you can learn from it, and through it, you can change." Ethan left the shop that day feeling unsteady, haunted by the vision he had seen, unable to stop thinking about the man in the mirror. For the first time, he realized that his dissatisfaction was not caused by the world or the people around him, but by the parts of himself he had ignored for years. His hidden impatience, his quiet pride, his fear of being vulnerable, and his tendency to avoid responsibility for his own happiness. He began to take small steps, first noticing when he was impatient with his colleagues, then apologizing when he snapped at his family over trivial matters, then speaking honestly about his fears rather than masking them with bravado. Each action felt strange at first, as though he were learning a new language, the language of authenticity and accountability. But slowly, the unease inside him began to ease. He stopped blaming circumstances and started observing his own reactions, asking himself why he felt anger or disappointment, and realizing that those emotions were rarely caused by others, but by unmet expectations, false narratives, and self-deception. Months passed, and Ethan returned to the shop, eager to see the mirror once more. When he looked, he saw a reflection that was both familiar and transformed. A man who still carried ambition and drive, but whose face held calmness, kindness, and a quiet wisdom. The mirror reflected not a perfect person, but a human who had faced himself honestly and begun to grow from that confrontation. He understood then that the mirror had not simply shown him a reflection, it had revealed the path he had to walk, one of self-awareness, courage, and integrity. Ethan carried these lessons into every aspect of his life. He led his team with empathy. He listened more than he spoke. He forgave both himself and others more readily. And he approached every relationship with the humility of someone who understood that every person they meet carries their own hidden battles. Over time, he noticed that the world around him changed as well. Colleagues became more cooperative, friends more open, and even small interactions with strangers held more meaning. He realized that the true transformation did not come from changing circumstances, but from changing himself first. The man who once felt restless and incomplete now moved through life with a quiet purpose, understanding that happiness and fulfillment were not rewards to be earned from external validation, but states of being cultivated through honesty, reflection, and conscious action. The mirror of truth taught him the hardest lesson, that avoiding one's inner reflection only prolongs suffering, and that facing it courageously can illuminate the way to a life of meaning, connection, and peace. Ethan also began sharing his lessons with others, not through preaching, but through example. He mentored young professionals at work, encouraging them to seek self-awareness over mere success. He helped friends confront their own fears, reminding them that the bravest thing anyone can do is face themselves without excuses. At home, he became more patient, listening to his family, not just with ears, but with his full presence. Understanding that meaningful connection requires vulnerability and honesty. As years went by, his life became a ripple of positive influence. People around him learned to reflect inward, to take responsibility, and to act with compassion. But perhaps the most important lesson Ethan learned was that transformation is never a one-time event. It is a continuous journey. Even when life tested him with setbacks, betrayals, and losses, he returned to his inner mirror, asking the difficult questions and accepting the uncomfortable truths. In doing so, he discovered resilience not as a rigid shield, but as a flexible strength rooted in clarity, humility, and courage. He realized that every choice, every thought, every interaction mattered, that the reflection in the mirror was not merely a static image, but a living representation of how he lived his life each day. And so he lived each day more intentionally, choosing integrity over convenience, kindness over pride, and authenticity over appearance, knowing that the real world is shaped not by wealth or status, but by the quality of one's character and the courage to confront oneself. The moral he carried and eventually shared with others was simple yet profound. The world you see outside is a reflection of the world you cultivate inside, and the hardest mirror you will ever face can become your greatest teacher if you choose to learn from it. By embracing his truth, Ethan discovered that the most powerful form of wisdom comes not from avoiding challenges or seeking approval, but from looking inward, acknowledging both strengths and flaws, and committing to growth. A lesson that transformed not only him, but also the lives of those he touched, leaving a legacy of introspection, compassion, and courage that would inspire countless others to face their own reflections with courage, humility, and honesty, proving that the hardest truths, once embraced, can become the most liberating force in a human life. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to Wisdom Life and also like, comment, and share the video to spread the message of self-reflection and growth.